Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. I'm going to give one more minute for other folks to join. I think we had 32 people or so registered, so all right, I'm going to get started and we'll allow folks to join as they can. Welcome, everyone. This is an information session covering the Northern Border Regional Commission's Timber for Transit grant program. I just want to pause and make sure folks can see my screen. Okay, saw a nod, so we'll keep going. This session will serve as a resource throughout the 2026 calendar year for both the spring and fall funding rounds for the Timber for Transit program. Just a few housekeeping items to start. Please keep your microphones muted. The session is being recorded and the recording and slides will be made available on the NBRC pre-application support page following this session. I'll offer time for questions and discussion at the end of the session. If you have burning questions as we move through, please feel free to pop those in the chat, and our team will do our best to answer as we go. I do have a couple of team members joining me today, including Adrienne Harrison, our Catalyst program manager, Casey Haynes, our program coordinator, and I see Sarah Lang, our LDD capacity coordinator, is also online. So thank you all for being here and supporting the chat questions. Again, this information session is focused on the Timber for Transit program, but we'll cover things like applicant and geographic eligibility, match and waiver information, and such that applies across NBRC programs. During this session, we'll dive into the pre-application process, requirements, and evaluation, and we'll leave you with next steps, additional resources, and finally conclude the session with Q&A. These are NBRC's 3 grant programs. Again, today's session will cover the Timber for Transit program. If you're not sure which program is the best fit for your project, I suggest you go back and review the program overview series. Parts 5 through 7 of that series give a quick snapshot of each of our competitive programs. I'll also mention I recorded a webinar just last week that covered the Timber for Transit, like a program overview and project development. That webinar featured some initial comments from NBRC's federal co-chair, as well as guest speakers from funded projects. So be sure to check that out. That is on the pre-application support page. I mentioned our program overview series. This is NBRC's pre-recorded overview series, linked here. If you're just starting to learn about NBRC grant funding, this is a great place to begin. The series breaks down the most important information to know in bite-sized pieces. I would say each video is about 5 to 10 minutes long. During this session, I'll review eligibility and waivers again, as waiver opportunities are available at the pre-application stage only. So if you're required to submit a waiver, it must be submitted with your pre-application. Review Part 2A of the Program Overview Series to hear from NBRC's data specialists about match requirements and available tools for identifying your match rate. We'll also get into match in a few slides. So I'll cover some things, but you can dive deeper in Part 2A of the Overview Series. The series also provides a deep dive into NBRC's funding policies and requirements, which are important but not covered during this information session. That's part 3 of the overview series and includes information like the period of performance, eligible purposes, ineligible purposes, how we treat program income, use of funding, the notice to proceed, NEPA review, the federal funding ceiling, and the Build America, Buy America Act. You can also review part 4 of the series that goes into more detail about our partnership with local development districts. I'll talk a little bit about that today during this session, but go back and review part 4 for a deep dive. Sarah Lang, our capacity coordinator, walks us through the importance of LDDs. Before we dive into timber for transit specifically today, the first thing a prospective applicant should do when considering NBRC funding is determine your eligibility. So we're going to dive right into eligibility and match requirements to start here. You can also refer to the grant program user manual and the distress criteria on NBRC's website to help you determine eligibility and match for your project. Those 2 resources are linked here. Really, I'm going to emphasize the importance of that grant program user manual. It has really all the information you could need to know about our policies and the programs, any waivers required. So be sure to use that as you develop your proposal and keep it open. When you're reviewing your project's eligibility, you first want to determine the applicant eligibility, then geographic eligibility, which informs the reimbursement and match rate for your project, and then identify any waivers that may pertain to your project. First is applicant eligibility. These entities listed here are eligible to receive NBRC funding. I'll note that for-profits and LLCs and other entities that are not a 501c status are not eligible for NBRC funding. If you are an eligible entity, you'll next want to determine if your project is located in an eligible location. As I mentioned, the location of the project determines the required match for your project. Match is the amount of funds or contributions needed from other sources to complete the NBRC funded project. And NBRC calculates minimum required match based on the socioeconomic distress of your project's service area. 3 things to know about match. First is match may be additional public or private funds, as well as in-kind or volunteer cost share. Second, a project's match rate percentage is the average of each rate, whether 50 or 20%, associated with your project's service area or areas. If the project spans a few municipalities, the final match rate will be the average of those areas' associated match rates. And thirdly, the percentage is then calculated on your total project cost. So for example, if a project's total project cost is $1 million and the project is located in a transitional service area, the match rate is then 50%, and the project can apply to NBRC for up to $500,000, and they would need to come with match for $500,000. I'm going to stay on this slide for a little bit here and walk through some key points about some changes in our match for this year. So these are new in 2026. I want to spend a few minutes giving you some background and then walk through how NBRC has worked over the past many months to make match rates more accessible, easier to understand, and more in line with other federal agency partners, so that you don't have to manage 2 or 3 different procedural match calculations in your capital stack. So first, in terms of the terms, we're moving away from using 2 terms that have been in the past confusing for grantees, and honestly for me as well. We used match, and then we also used the term cost share. And match meaning the match percentage on NBRC funds, and then cost share meaning any additional match beyond the minimum that's required to complete the funded project. In other words, we asked you to give us documentation proving you had match and cost share before we would issue the project a full notice to proceed. So we treated match and cost share the same. This requirement remains in place and aligns with industry standard practice for federal agencies. We are requiring this documentation to ensure you have enough funding for the whole project, because no agency wants to put taxpayer funding into a project in a community if you have not secured enough funding to complete that project. So we were making you prove this all along, but we called it 2 different things. Now we're moving to calling it just match. So we're asking now that the total project costs match is what you show us. We have a note in our instructions. If you're doing something really complex, a multi-million-dollar infrastructure project, for example, and you believe NBRC funds can come in early and be matched early, and then you can continue with your ongoing capital raising or borrowing, we do recommend you think about phasing your project with NBRC funds in and out early in a complex project. That way you don't have to wait to use our funds until the whole project is financed. So we've gotten a little more granular this year in terms of calculating distress. We all know that this region has pockets of higher socioeconomic success and pockets of socioeconomic distress. Sometimes those pockets are literally the next town over. One town might have a big employer or recreation asset that means that they have higher median household income and more indicators of good quality of life and opportunity, while the next town over may have significant poverty metrics. When we used our distress metrics at the county level, we would sometimes lose the ability to fund a more economically distressed town at the match rate it deserved, simply because we were combining all match rates from all towns in the county. In other words, some of our communities deserve more match from NBRC, but our data didn't capture their local metrics. Now we've changed that this year, so we're excited to share that all applicants can now choose county or community based on their selected project service areas. And we have a formula and data in place to allow you to find out if your town is one of those that may deserve a higher match rate from NBRC. As a result of this, we have over 600 towns and county subdivisions across our 4 states that can move from attainment to transitional or transitional to distressed due to this more granular way of reviewing available data. Again, at the top of this slide, Part 2A of the program overview series goes over this match determination and also our 3 tools, which I'll cover just briefly here. So combining this new granular approach with our existing grants management system, we wish would work really easily, but in reality, it's a bit more complicated. We've made these tools to help make this more simple for our applicants. We have a static list now available online that has both your county's match rate and your community's match rate. So you can scroll through the pages and find your town if your project serves just one town and use that in your pre-application and application. We have a GIS-based online map. That resource is handy because you can just hover your mouse over your community and the match rate will automatically pop up but so will the LDDs who may be serving your region and a few other pieces of data. Finally, let's say you have a project that serves 2 towns or 3 counties in a state. We used to run this match rate internally, but now we have a downloadable Excel-based tool called our match estimator calculator or match rate calculator, number 3 on this slide, that will provide you with a combined match rate based on the multiple locations for your project. The most important thing to know about all of these is that we had to work on the back end to plug in our GMS, our grants management system, and the easiest way to match the locations with our GMS is with what's called a geo ID. So for any one of these tools, the list, the map, or the calculator, you need to put in your pre-application, and it will carry into your application both the rate and the geo ID. Without that, the system won't work as well for us or for you. And it's harder for NBRC to report to Congress where our funding is going. So be sure to check out those 3 tools, that program overview series part 2A. We also have more information on our match determination page available online. Moving to waiver requirements, the next 3 slides I'll cover waivers. Again, the waiver opportunity is available at pre-application only. An eligible applicant with an open or active NBRC award cannot receive additional NBRC investment until the current award has both submitted reimbursements requesting a total of 75% or more of the project and demonstrated that 75% of the match has been expended before the pre-application deadline. And we actually look at, how much has been expended before the first of the month of the pre-application deadline. So we're looking at February 1st for the spring 2026 round and August 1st for the fall round. If the 75% expenditure requirement cannot be met, the applicant can apply for a waiver, and that 75% expenditure waiver must be submitted with the pre-application. You can find more information on this waiver and all of our waivers in the grant program's user manual, part 3, which is all of our appendices, and those include the waivers. The next waiver I'll talk about is the significant benefit waiver. Entities eligible for a significant benefit waiver are those who are located within an attainment county, but not within a distressed or transitional county or community, or are located outside of the NBRC region, but within a member state. Entities eligible for a significant benefit waiver must demonstrate the project will bring significant economic benefits to NBRC distressed or transitional communities or counties. A significant benefit waiver or SBW request requires approval by the federal co-chair and the governor's alternates of the 4 NBRC states. This waiver must be approved for the entity to be considered eligible, and only eligible entities may be invited to submit a full application. If an applicant or co-applicant is required to submit an SBW and does not submit it fully executed with narrative explaining the significant economic benefits of the project, that pre-application will not be considered eligible for further consideration. Again, more information on all of our waivers in the appendices of the grant program user manual. Finally is this LDD requirement. This is new to Timber for Transit in 2026, so we've expanded this requirement to cover all of our grant programs. The LDD or Local Development District Administration requirement is required of all applicants except for state government entities and LDDs. So those entities are exempt from this requirement and therefore do not need to submit a waiver. LDD administration costs is required to be built into a project's budget during the application phases. Once a project is awarded, LDDs are then paid to assist with administration tasks like reporting and reimbursements. Part 4 of our program overview series covers the LDD requirement and our partnership with LDDs in more depth. But I will mention now that we recommend connecting early with your LDD, and a current list of those participating partners is available on our About LDDs page, which is linked on this slide. Okay. Now we'll dive into more detail on the Timber for Transit program specifically. This next section will cover the program purpose, available funding, project categories, program evaluation priorities, state priorities, and you'll find links to view funded projects, including at the bottom of this slide, which I thought I'd fixed so it wouldn't be cut off, but I will fix it before these slides go online. This program is specifically designed to advance the use of domestic forest products in transportation infrastructure projects across Maine, New Hampshire, New York, and Vermont to showcase the capabilities of wood in these applications. So, domestic forest products that showcase wood in transportation infrastructure applications. The NBRC may award up to $14 million in 2026 for Timber for Transit projects that demonstrate the capabilities of wood in transportation infrastructure. The timber piece is key to this program. If you plan to apply, we want to know how you plan to incorporate and really showcase advanced timber materials in the project. Funding for the Timber for Transit program comes to NBRC as a transfer from Federal Highway Administration. And it happens to come with some deadlines attached. So Timber for Transit funding will be competitively awarded in 2 funding rounds, and NBRC hopes to award at least $9 million in the spring round of 2026. And I mentioned this, it's an important consideration for projects thinking of delaying their application. It's also important to note that this funding is one bucket, not divided by states. So for that reason, all projects are reviewed by NBRC and all of our member states. Part 2C of our grant programs user manual covers the Timber for Transit program specifically. These are the most important dates for the spring and fall funding rounds. Any updates, if there are, for any reason, changes to these dates will be made in the program timeline available on the link at the bottom of this slide. After pre-applications are submitted, projects can expect to hear back from NBRC for the spring round the week of March 30th, and for the fall round the week of September 28th. You'll hear back from us on the status of your project and any information from NBRC. That may be invitation to apply, if applicable, with feedback. It may be a recommendation to submit in a future round with feedback, if available, or it may be an ineligibility determination. This program is designed to support projects through what we call feasibility and implementation categories. Feasibility for the Timber for Transit program are early stage activities such as planning, inventory assessments, engineering, design, cost benefit analysis, permitting, site assessments, and environmental assessments that support future Timber for Transit implementation projects as identified here. Those projects under the feasibility category are eligible for up to $1 million. Feasibility funding is preferred for projects in the early development stages, projects that require that planning and environmental review or permitting, or where pre-work is necessary to determine the timber materials best suited for the project and the cost of those materials. Projects like these will benefit from feasibility funding not only to do all of that pre-work, but also to prepare for additional funding for the implementation stages. Projects that have completed the pre-work are set up well for implementation funding. Projects that have not done the required pre-work that propose doing pre-work and construction in one scope of work may experience delays, most commonly because the environmental review must be completed before NBRC can grant access to any of the award. So feasibility projects can include state or regional inventory assessments of the suitability of wood components for necessary transportation infrastructure improvements or new construction. It could also include architectural and engineering designs, cost analyses, and permitting necessary for implementation of those transportation infrastructure projects. For implementation, construction such as assets and facilities that align with the Timber for Transit program priorities will be classified as the implementation category and are eligible for up to $5 million. Projects in this category requesting more than 1 million must meet some higher maximum requirements, and I'll get into some details about those requirements in a later slide, and they're available in the grant program user manual. So here are some common examples of transportation infrastructure where advanced timber products can be utilized. The first example is a glue laminated timber and composite decking used for both vehicular and pedestrian bridges. Cross-laminated timber can be used in transportation and adjacent structures such as airports, highway rest areas, and train depots or train stations. NBRC also accepts outdoor recreation structures to this program, so structures like trail, pedestrian walkways that incorporate advanced timber materials, and welcome centers that incorporate CLT are eligible for this program. We have also funded projects that utilize wood or wood-derived materials in culverts and nanocellulose in concrete. In both cases, there's a tie to transportation, and the project clearly utilizes wood or woody biomass material in the application. We require projects to utilize domestic wood products, but projects that incorporate wood products from the NBRC region may be reviewed favorably. Okay, coming back to the higher maximum requirements. This is determined at pre-application. A review happens at pre-application for eligibility for the higher maximum. Projects requesting more than $1 million must be an implementation project first, involving construction. And second, they must address the higher maximum requirements. NBRC will consider awards up to $5 million for projects that demonstrate at least one of these bulleted items here. First, the project demonstrates alignment with 2 or more of the program evaluation priorities of this program. Project has been identified by NBRC or a state as addressing a time-sensitive issue of magnitude or severity that will be addressed by the project. Or construction takes place in 2 or more eligible communities, counties, or states. Again, projects requesting more than 1 million must meet at least one of these criteria. And eligibility for the higher maximum will be determined at pre-application. NBRC and states evaluate projects based on their ability to address 6 program investment priorities. These are the priorities for making investments through the Timber for Transit program and should be closely considered when developing a proposal. The Commission would like to invest in projects that commit to utilizing domestically sourced timber, that demonstrate evidence of planning for extreme weather readiness, including but not limited to carbon capture and increased intensity of storm events and sea level rise. We like to see projects that are utilized as a tool for university and industry education and training. So think engineering and other courses that teach students how to build with advanced wood materials. The agency wants to invest in projects that demonstrate alignment with state and community initiatives as well, that include promotion, publication, and marketing as part of the project deliverables. And finally, at the core of NBRC's mission, that projects that benefit or support or engage communities impacted by specific socioeconomic indicators. Because the purpose of this program is to showcase the capabilities of wood and transportation infrastructure applications, it also always helps for projects that have high visibility in the community or the region. One of the evaluation priorities I mentioned was alignment with state and community initiatives. Proposals that align with state transportation priorities will be more competitive, so be sure to review your state's transportation priorities, linked here, and in the grant program user manual. If you have questions, you might look to connect with your state program manager if you plan to submit a pre-application and talk to them about alignment with state priorities. To find your state program manager, you can visit the NBRC contacts page or click the link in the yellow star here on this slide. So I'll give 3 specific examples of projects NBRC has funded through this program. I've selected 3 here to share today, but you can go view the full list of 12 project investments on your state's NBRC page or by clicking the link at the bottom of this slide. The first one here, the Vermont Agency of Transportation, was funded in the fall of 2025. They were awarded $375,000 from NBRC for a feasibility study. The Vermont Agency of Transportation will conduct feasibility assessment for a new welcome center near the Canadian border in Highgate. That study will evaluate site suitability, use of advanced wood products, and renewable heating options for the facility. The project supports transportation infrastructure, tourism, and the forest economy, and the total project cost is $750,000. The town of Sand Lake in the middle here, it's a New York project. The town of Sand Lake will replace their 1920s era Johnny Cake Lane Bridge over a creek with a modern climate resilient structure. The new bridge will be made from advanced wood products and improve hydraulic capacity, accommodate two-way traffic and pedestrians, and enhance safety and access for locals. The award from NBRC for this project was $750,000, and the total project costs $1.5 million. The town of Island Falls was awarded a higher maximum award from NBRC at just over $2.8 million. NBRC funds for this project will be used to support the creation of their Island Bridge Community Park, which is an initiative designed to enhance tourism and boost their local economy and promote sustainable forestry. The project features a pedestrian bridge constructed using glue laminated timber made from spruce, fir, and hemlock, sourced from the town's 9,000-acre forest. The bridge will connect the downtown district with the park. One of the key elements of this project that made it competitive was the use of wood products from the town, or the use of wood feedstock from the town forest. Many other project examples, again, well, I'll say 9 other, because we have 12 funded projects, can be seen on our Timber for Transit Award history on the Timber for Transit program page. So look there if you are looking for more inspiration or just curious of how other investments have been made through this program. I'm going to pause here to give my voice a break, and then we'll get into pre-application and evaluation. So I'll pause for questions at this point.
There's a question that just came in. It's about who needs the account in the GMS to apply for a project. I plan to assist the community in applying for funding. Does the community need an account with the GMS, or does the person who's applying for um, that that community need the account? Um, Casey, correct me if I'm wrong. Uh, the application should come from the community, and they can make you a user in the GMS so that you can complete the information for the pre-application and application materials in the GMS with them, for them, but it should come from the place where the project is happening. So correct me if I'm wrong, Casey, but I thought I'd just jump in on
Totally.
that one.
My only caveat for folks who are providing like technical assistance for other organizations is that though if you are given access to an account, it's not your account as a technical assistance provider. It's an account that is underneath that organization. And so you won't be able to assist a different organization with that same email address. So you may want to consider um, asking for a temporary email address from that organization so that your own personal technical assistance email doesn't become like unavailable in the system.
That's great. Thank you both. I see another question here. In the case of a feasibility study for a building or site assessment, will NBRC fund the entire scope or study, or would it proportionally fund the scope pertaining to wood-based use? So we don't have like a minimum requirement of NBRC funds that has to go towards wood products. But I will mention that a project where 1% of the NBRC award goes to wood products and the rest is, personnel and steel products will be less competitive under this program because it doesn't meet as well our evaluation priorities. For a feasibility project, we can fund the larger scope of work of that feasibility project, and we'll want to see specific details about how you are planning to incorporate wood components. So Jennifer, does that answer your question? Okay, great. We haven't seen any blue economy projects, but I'd be interested to talk further about them. We don't, for this program, have the blue economy defined. I think if there are like ports or transportation structures where wood components can be utilized, I would welcome a discussion about those. And of course, that applies to one of our member states. I guess New Hampshire could be included in the coastal economy, but
The Great Lakes.
yeah.
Huh? And the Great Lakes. So New
And
York.
the Great Lakes, yeah.
Sure.
So yeah, happy to talk about that maybe separately. And I know Sarah mentioned in the chat that we can discuss offline. Yes, Lisa, so at pre-application, there is an opportunity, and I'll get to this in a few slides too, to identify match for the project. It can be committed or pending at the application phases, but we do like to see, how the full project budget is coming together early on. You don't need to provide like letters of commitment at the pre-application stage or even at the application stage, but it gives us a sense of your full project budget and the other partners involved. Right. I will keep on moving through, and just to that last question, I certainly will not pretend to be an expert in wood products. So I don't know exactly what types of wood products could be used in marine applications, but can certainly pull in some experts to advise on that. All right, I'll keep us moving through this next section. This next section covering the pre-application process and evaluation. We'll cover the process for getting started, pre-application requirements, evaluations, and next steps. The grants management system is linked here. Registration is the first step to submitting a pre-application. Your registration will need to be approved by NBRC before you can create a pre-application in the system. As of this past Monday, February 2nd, the spring round registrants can now qualify for the program they intend to apply once their registration is approved. And that qualifying is simply pressing the qualify button for the project or the program that you want to submit a pre-application for. Pre-applications are a required step and must be submitted in the grants management system with any waivers for the spring round by February 27th. So all pre-applications, again, must be submitted via the system. Step 1, registration. Step 2, qualify. We have resources on the grants management system, understanding that this may be a new system for folks. We have guidance for navigating it and steps to submitting the pre-application that are available on the resources page of our website, linked here. For today, we'll go over the questions that will be asked as part of the pre-application. When you register in the GMS, it'll ask about your organization. Basic details like the name of your organization, the address, the type of applicant you are, your EIN, contacts, etc. To receive an award, you will need a UEI number or unique entity ID. If you don't have one prior to pre-application is a great time to register, which you can do for free at sam.gov. If you are invited to apply, all of this information will be carried over into your application. Once you've registered, you'll be asked additional pre-application questions. We ask if you're a previous NBRC award recipient. This helps us track how many new applicants we have, as well as that 75% expenditure requirement. We'll also ask if your project serves a rural community with a population less than 5,000. It's not a requirement that the community you serve is less than 5,000 people, but another data point that we track. You'll be asked to share the primary place of performance, essentially where the project takes place. This may not necessarily be the address of the applicant entity. You'll be asked to provide a zip code, county, and optional to add in latitude and longitudinal coordinates as well, so you can get as detailed as possible. And you'll be asked for a project title. We ask folks not to make their project title like Spring 2026 Timber for Transit application, but something unique to your project. All right, this slide covers budget requirements. There are two components to the budget at pre-application phase, the budget narrative and budget details. The budget narrative is a text box where you'll be asked to list and describe expenses over $5,000. You'll also be asked to list out match sources in a table and the status of that match source, committed, secured, or pending, and commitments or expected commitment dates. You'll be asked for a detailed budget, which will show us how project funds will be allocated across categories. I'll show those categories on the next slide. And include how NBRC and cost share will be allocated across the budget. So these are the budget categories you'll see in the GMS. You'll be able to list costs according to the category. If you're familiar with the detailed federally required 424 CBW form. These categories align with the budget categories within that form. If your project is invited to apply at the application stage is when we'll ask for the SF 424 CBW. For a list of eligible costs, ineligible purposes that apply to all NBRC grant programs, you'll want to review Part 1 of the Grant Programs User Manual. One thing to note about the GMS table is that it will automatically calculate whether you've met your minimum match requirement based on the location that you choose. So remember that the location of the project informs the match rate. So now at this point, we have your registration, organization information, and a sense of the budget. Next, you'll be asked some narrative questions. Each text box has a 5,000 character limit, about 2 to 3 pages of space, which we encourage you to develop your responses within a Word document so you can copy and paste that information into the grants management system. It also ensures that information is saved in the event, something happens in the GMS, which we haven't seen yet, unless people don't save and kind of exit out. The system, when you do that, copy and paste in, may count invisible characters, and we do have a solution for that if that issue arises. So you can copy and paste your content as plain text into a notepad or similar app or wordcounter.net. That will strip the invisible formatting and characters so that they're not counted in the GMS. You can then copy and paste the unformatted text, so from the wordcounter.net resource or like, into the GMS. Reformat your content from there with the tools that are integrated in the grants management system. The first narrative question is the project abstract. You'll be asked to provide a summary, identify the project category, describe the status of the project, what's the overall scope, tasks and activities, and anticipated time frame for completion of the project. The first 2 to 3 sentences of your project abstract should give the reader a really good sense of the project and an intended use of NBRC funding. Remember that NBRC and our state partners are reading through many, many applications, so make your abstract narrative really clear and concise. It should explain the basic idea of your project, how it fits with the Timber for Transit program. I would say 2 to 3 paragraphs of text, although you can do more. It should say the primary purpose of your project, the funding category, and the project scope. Next are the project goals, outcomes, and outputs. You'll be asked to list and explain the expected economic outcomes. NBRC will review project outcomes as identified in later your application's key performance indicators. At pre-application, you don't need to enter KPIs, but it's important to familiarize yourself with the key performance indicators early. Not all program KPIs will apply to your project, but some of them should. So the Grant Programs User Manual Part 3, specifically Appendix E, has more information on NBRC's key performance indicators. We have some KPIs that apply to all programs and some that apply just to the Timber for Transit program. NBRC and states both place a strong emphasis on the economic impacts of the project. So again, important to get clear on what KPIs might apply to your project early on. Next are the program evaluation priorities. This is your opportunity to explain how your project addresses the priorities of the program. You can also describe here how your project addresses NBRC's agency investment priorities. and provide details and documentation regarding your project's alignment with those priorities. This narrative question on project beneficiaries and community context is an opportunity to share who the project will benefit and why it matters to the community. You may also explain the demographics of the community and, if applicable, how the project helps community resiliency. Lastly is the statement of need. We'll ask about the challenge or problem the project seeks to address, the proposed solution and importance of the project at this time, and why NBRC funding specifically is important. So describe why the project is important, the challenge that it addresses, and you can pull in any NBRC or state investment priorities that your project addresses. That is the end of the pre-application, at which point you'll hit submit, and your project will be in the hands of NBRC and our state and partner reviewers. Now, I recommend submitting your application, hitting that submit button early, because hitting the submit button triggers the GMS to do those evaluations, like looking at the budget table and making sure that your match is coming in at the rate based on your project's location. If there are any problems when you hit submit, you will have some kind of a red ribbon at the top of your pre-application window that will tell you, on the overview tab, you need to go and address this issue, or the budget tab, you need to address this issue. So by hitting that submit button early, you can then work through any kinks, ask NBRC if you need help, etc. So hit that submit button early. I'm going to pause again before we get into evaluation of pre-applications. And there are only a few slides there. So are there any questions? Yeah, Jennifer, we do have a tool. It's an Excel spreadsheet that's available on our match determination page. And you can download the spreadsheet, download it in Excel, and work through what your match would be at a statewide level. Once you hit submit and an application comes to us, you can't unsubmit. And what I'll say is that the system won't actually submit your application until those errors are addressed. So you'll immediately be stopped, have to correct the errors before it can come to NBRC. Excuse me. My second of these sessions today, so my voice is a little hoarse. I think we've answered all questions in the chat. So I will keep us moving here. Pre-applications are evaluated by NBRC and our state partners based on the scoring criteria listed in the grant program user manual. So it's important to connect with your state program manager prior to submitting a pre-application. They may have insights and feedback to ensure your project aligns with state priorities and is competitive. This next section will review evaluation process in greater detail. In issuing invitations to apply at the pre-application stage, NBRC will consider outside input, the costs and expected benefits associated with the requested NBRC investment, the projects identified as a state priority, and the benefits provided to the broader community and region. And let me just say we don't have an advisory board for the Timber for Transit program, so I will remove that bullet point. carried over from our forest economy program slides before these slides go up. NBRC will also consider the costs and associated benefits of NBRC funding, as well as the benefits to the broader region, and will consider projects identified as a state priority. State program manager role in the Timber for Transit program is to assist in project development where needed, to review and assess pre-applications for alignment with Timber for Transit priorities, and states and NBRC decide which projects move forward to application. Invitations to apply will be issued by NBRC on behalf of both parties. If you're looking to connect with your state program manager, I recommend completing a project interest form prior to requesting a meeting. That gives them some information about your project before you meet with them. All right, finally, what's next? First of all, thank you for attending this information session. Your next steps are outlined here. Be sure to confirm your eligibility for NBRC funding. Review the many resources we have, from the grant program user manual, the overview series, state priorities, GMS resources that we have available. It may help you to self-classify your project to see if it fits well within the Timber for Transit project categories and addresses program evaluation priorities. As part of your review of the grant program manual, be sure to review the Timber for Transit scoring criteria and cater your pre-application responses to the requirements listed there. If you're reaching out to a state program manager, just to go back to that, please note that states may be inundated with requests. So try to get in touch early and be patient if you don't get a response right away. Questions about the GMS, specifically program requirements, NBRC policies, things like that, should be directed to admin@nbrc.gov, whereas questions about alignment with state priorities can go to your state program manager. Right, and then you can register and begin developing responses to the pre-application questions. There are several resources I alluded to during these slides. They're all linked here. The grant program user manual, our timeline, our pre-application support page where these slides and this recording will go, our Timber for Transit program page, and resources for the grants management system. Okay. Discuss indirect costs and how communities should account for them in your budget. So NBRC allows indirect costs. We have a de minimis rate of 15% that is accepted. At application stage, if your indirect cost rate is above that, you will need a negotiated indirect cost rate agreement submitted with your application that shows what rate your organization uses. So, Madeline and Lisa, does that answer your question about indirect costs?
Yes, it does. I have another question, though, related
Sure.
to this. And this is like, the grant allows the town to include indirect costs in the budget line item. But if the town were to contribute those costs, could that be considered part of its match?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
I have a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I am looking at basically starting a project from scratch. It would be replacing a small bridge structure with a new timber bridge structure. So the project would include all of the preliminary engineering up front to figure out the dimensions and cost estimates and things like that. Then it would also be for construction of the new bridge. I think you had mentioned something earlier about that there might be an issue if you apply for both of them now because you need all of the environmental things done before any of the grant money is distributed. Would you recommend that I only apply for a feasibility grant at this stage of the project and then potentially a implementation grant later on down the road if the feasibility one gets awarded?
Yeah, I honestly think that is the best route for folks, because when you apply for both feasibility and construction, the way NBRC initiates awards is we review the NEPA. So we do an analysis of NEPA for the project. It sounds like yours would involve in-ground disturbances, so that NEPA review could be pretty in-depth. We have more information on our NEPA page. But before we can give access to any funding, a project has to pass the NEPA review steps. So you could be waiting for that NEPA review to be completed. We do offer, a partial notice to proceed for the NEPA steps specifically, but you would be limited to access to funding for that, those activities only before we kind of release the next trench of your award to you. So it's up to you. But by combining both feasibility and the construction, it just means that you might have to wait longer to be given access to funding. Whereas if you're just doing the feasibility work, your project is likely a CADX, and we can give access to funds really early on, and the project can be probably completed more swiftly. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Any other questions while our team is live here? All right. Well, thank you everyone for your attention today. If you have questions, email admin@nbrc.gov. That is if those questions are not answered in our grant program user manual or other places. Be sure to check out the resources we have available. Awesome. Thanks, everyone. I'll close out this meeting. Thanks, Adrian and Casey and Sarah for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.